All right, guys, I have graded your summary responses finally. I'm sorry it took me so long. So I have graded your summary responses, and before I go over some of the kind of feedback that I want to provide and explain in detail a little bit of the stuff that you'll see when you look at your feedback, I want to show you how to access it. Now, I'm not in your class in particular, but this will suffice. So you want to go into your grades. Right here where it says grades, you want to click on grades, and it's going to take you to all of your assignments, and you're going to click on summary response. And in that summary response, you should see this section that says view feedback. And it's going to bring you to this little place where you'll see all of my margin notes, and I'll have, some long paragraph about what you did really well and what would make your writing stronger. So that's how you're going to access your feedback. Please take the time to read it because it takes an incredibly long time to grade and comment and make sure that you guys are on the right track, because these are things that you guys are going to want to remember for the next assignment that you write. So moving into that, I would like to talk to you guys about some global class-wide observations that I made when grading your summary response. This is kind of for everybody. If you didn't see this in your writing, and anyways, it's things that you want. These are things that you want to remember for your next paper. So the first thing that I want to mention is remember MLA format, especially when it comes to headers and the way that things are supposed to look on your opening page. Keep in mind that it should be the student name, the professor name, the course name, and the day that the assignment is due, and it should look like this. It should be 20 October 2020, not October 20, 2020, or 10 20 20. It should read just like this because that is consistent with MLA guidelines and MLA requirements. The other thing that I want to mention is in the upper right hand header here, you should have your last name and the page number. All right, the other thing that I noticed is that some of you did not introduce the title of the article or the author. Whenever you're responding to, summarizing, analyzing an article or a piece of anything, that whenever you're using a work from someone else, you always want to give credit to the person who wrote it, and you also want to mention the title of the article that you're looking at. Sean Blanda has written lots of articles, so just saying in this article by Sean Blanda, well, I don't know which article you're talking about. Or in this article, the author, well, there are thousands of articles written in this world. I don't know which one you mean. So you always want to give the name of the author, first and last name initially, and give the title of the work that you intend to explore or discuss. Keep in mind that article titles are in quotation marks because they are small. They are not big, large, self-contained piece of works. They are in quotation marks. They are not italicized. Nothing is italicized. You want to make sure that your article title is in quotation marks. Moving on to talking about the author again. I mentioned introducing him by first or last name, him or her by them by first and last name only. I mean, first and last name initially, and then after you've mentioned the person's name once, you always want to refer to them at least, by the very least, by their last name. It is Blanda. It is not Sean. You do not know Sean Blanda that way. You don't know him intimately enough to call him by his first name. So, I mean, think about it this way. You would never come up to me and say, "Yo, Nikki, what's up?" No, because we don't have that kind of relationship. You don't have that kind of relationship with the author. So always refer to the author by his or her last name as a sign of authority and as a sign of respect. So the other thing that I want to mention is this is probably the one that I had most consistently throughout the class, is the use of the second person you. And I know that it is a habit that is hard to break, and it's something that we don't really think about when we write, but academic writing, the kind of writing that you guys are going to be doing, does not cater to using the second person you. One reason why you want to avoid the second person you is because it creates this inappropriate relationship between the author and the audience. And remember that when you think about the rhetorical situation, you're not always addressing the audience that you think you're addressing. So by calling out or talking to the reader as if you know them personally by saying you, it creates this inappropriate relationship. So, for example, I have done all sorts of things in according to you guys. I have called people dumb. I have ignored what other people said. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, you're accusing your audience of doing something that you don't want them to do or that they should have done. But to put it in another context, if I said you should quit smoking, well, that's assuming that your reader smokes, and that may or may not be the case. So it creates this inappropriate relationship between you and the audience. So you want to avoid that use of the second person you. But it also ultimately creates these grammatical issues between subject-object agreement, which I could go on and on about, but take my word for it, it creates these grammatical issues that are challenging. So avoid the use of the second person you. The other thing that I want to mention is be specific. And by being specific, I mean avoid the use of vague pronouns, things like it means or this this is or that is. Well, really define what you mean by this or that, because I don't know. The topic, the issue, the sentiment, the idea, what, give a name to that, define that for me so I can you don't want you want to make sure that your writing is as clear and specific and direct as it can be, and using vague pronouns or vague kind of nouns like that don't add specificity or clarity to your writing. Close reading, and this is going to be really important moving forward because you guys are going to be reading tons of stuff between now and the end of the semester. You're going to be reading lots of articles, you're going to be reading a novel, you're going to be reading research. You want to get used to that close reading practice where you look beyond the surface level, beyond the surface meaning, and look for something deeper where there are larger implications. So, for example, on the surface, yes, Sean Blanda's article is about looking at the other side or keeping an open mind about things when trying to have kind of this about controversial issues. But there are some larger implications there, and that leads me into this idea of development. By looking at the larger implications, like this article is not all about, well, the other side isn't dumb, I should be open-minded to seeing what other people should do. The larger implication here is that when we have arguments, quote unquote, we're having conversations, and they should be conversations, and we should be open to listening to what other people say in order to kind of think about, well, am I right? Am I wrong? Or is that person equally as right as I am? Do they have valid reasons for believing what they do? The other thing is what I guess the question is what do we lose when we don't challenge our way of thinking, or when we don't explore all the pertinent information and really question our beliefs and our views to make them either stronger or to kind of change our position on some things. So you want to look at the larger implication and explain why should we care, or explain so what, and tell me why we should care. And doing a close reading can help you with that development. If you use words or phrases that the author specifically uses, you have to give credit to the author. Otherwise, it is plagiarism. So moving on to that, looking at quotations, there are a few things that I want to say about quotations. Largely overall, I'm pretty tickled pink at how well you guys handled your direct quotations. But the one thing I do want to mention is that direct quotations should not begin or end paragraphs. Body paragraphs should begin with a topic sentence, not a direct quotation, because you want the first word, because this is your essay, your voice and your tone should control that. And then quotation should be the illustration, the support that you want to prove kind of the point that you're trying to make. And then finally, you don't want to end a paragraph with a direct quotation because you want to take the time to explain your interpretation or how you're reading it and explain why it matters in some significant larger context. I didn't have so many problems with this and with you guys, but I do want to mention that in the future, just in case you guys forget, direct quotations cannot stand on their own as complete sentences. They can't be these like balloon quotes. So for example, here, right here, I have a quote from the text that I am using as a sentence all on its own. That's not how direct quotations are meant to be used. They're meant to be integrated and woven into your own writing. So here I have my phrase of attribution, and then here I've included part of what he's saying, and then here's the rest of the quote. So it's no longer a sentence on its own. It's integrated into words of my own. I do also want to mention very quickly that because I have Blanda's name here, I do not need it in my in-text citation. But if I had, if I got rid of this Blanda, I would put Blanda in the in-text citation. Moving on to in-text citations. In-text citations include an author and a number, no period, no comma, no p, no nothing. You don't have any of that business or nonsense in there. So all you need is the author and the page number. In-text citations go at the end of the sentence that they belong in and not directly after the quote. So right here, I have an example of what I mean. Here is my direct quotation or whatever, and then I have my in-text citation directly after that. You don't want to put it there because it breaks the continuity of the sentence up. It's distracting. You want to put it here at the end. And I know that you're saying, well, Miss Swan, this is what he's saying. This is how I'm showing a distinction between my words and their words. Well, I know the distinction between your words and Sean Blanda's words because there are quotation marks around his and not yours. So you're giving credit to this and taking credit for that. So that's just an example of what that would look like. And I also want to mention that the period of in-text citations, they don't belong here. They belong here. So a period goes at the end of the close of the parentheses. I'm almost done. I promise I'm not trying to talk too long. I do want to mention your works cited page. And keep in mind, it is always works cited, whether you're citing one thing or 100 things. It is works cited. It is greedy. It wants its own room. It's like a spoiled little brat child. A works cited page always belongs on its own. It has its own space. And it should be alphabetized and by author's last name, and it should have a hanging indent. So that's what a hanging indent looks like right there. So you want to keep that in mind when you're working on your works cited page. And I appreciate those of you who put a works cited page on your assignment. And I do want to mention, and I know that I mentioned in a lot of the essays that we talk about how to cite appropriately the work, The Other Side Is Not Dumb by Sean Blanda. A number of you cited the anthology, and Gerald Graff was the first person whose name that I saw because he is the editor of the anthology. However, you are not citing the entirety of the anthology because that is not where we're talking about a piece of the anthology, and Gerald Graff did not write the article The Other Side Is Not Dumb. Sean Blanda did. So if you look in this week's module in the They Say, I Say Rhetorical Strategies section, there is a file called MLA Refresher, and there is a bunch of formulas and formats that you'll be using in this class that kind of give the formula for you for a variety of different formats and text. But for anything that comes from your they say, I say, and this is important, especially for your first essay, it will be cited as a work from an anthology, and that's what that formula looks like. You have to have the last name and the first name of the author, so Shawn Blanda, Blanda Shawn, the title of the essay in quotation marks because it is not something that is italicized, it is a part of a whole. So the other side is not dumb. And then the title of the collection, which is italicized because it is a standalone book on its own. So it is italicized. Edited by, you have to have that phrase, edited by the name of the editor, the publisher, the year, and then the page range of the essay or the article that you guys read. So please keep that in mind in the future when you're working on your works cited page. They are separate, they have a hanging indent, they're alphabetized, and anything that comes from the they say, I say is a work from an anthology. Things to avoid, like the plague, empty, fluffy personal phrases like "I believe," "in my opinion," "I feel." In some regards, the summary response was a response, so I was a little bit lenient in terms of how personal you could be with the I, but you always, in every instance, you want to avoid these types of phrases when you're writing academically because you want to have a tone of authority, one of conviction, and by putting things like "in my opinion," you cheapen and weaken your own otherwise strong point. Obviously, you feel this way if you're writing this way. Obviously, you believe it if you're writing it. So instead of having these kind of dismiss it. I mean, it's easy for your reader to dismiss these things and not take you seriously because it sounds more wishy-washy and non-authoritative. So avoid those things. You also want to avoid declarative phrases. None of you really use these, but I did want to kind of nip it in the bud before you start writing your essay. You want to avoid declarative phrases like "this will analyze," "I intend to discuss," or "this paper will explore," whatever the case may be. You want to avoid those types of phrases. So, and finally, when writing about anything from any kind of text in MLA format, you want to make sure that you refer to it in the present tense, not past. So that's all I have for you all. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than I wanted, but please take the opportunity to look over these and let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything I said on your summary response. And overall, I'm really pleased and I'm really excited to work with you guys and see where you guys move from your writing because you're already starting in a great place. So let me know if you have any questions and I'll be in touch.